This is a little piece of something from this new novel I'm working on that I'm supposed to have done by the end of the summer. I don't know if I'll make it or not. We'll see. Ron Rash said, you can make it through the semester. Just remember, you get the whole summer off. You get the whole summer off. And you can write that novel. You can write that novel, but by the time classes just ended yesterday, or no, today, and I don't want to write a novel. I just want to go lay around. But I got to, maybe this will inspire me, and my writing group's sitting here staring at me, giving me looks. So anyway, I'm talking too much. I'll read. I don't think you need to know anything. This character's named Hesper. She lives in the mountains of North Carolina. I think that's about all. This love story starts the way a lot of them does. Springtime, saps are rising, boy and a girl don't know no better. Starts with Daddy bringing home his boy from town. I knowed C.L. Edwards from school, but hadn't seen him since I quit 6th grade. That darn teacher, she wouldn't let me alone, always after me to raise my hand and answer. Got on to me if I was the last one in and left the door standing open. Last time I done that, she said, Hesper Pendleton, was you born in a barn? Well, I tell you, that fired me up good. I looked that old heifer dead in the eye and I said, yes, ma'am, that's why every time I hear a jackass bray, I get homesick. So that's where I'm going now, home. That's something my grandma really did do. So I shouldn't tell that, but, you know, you got these good things and you don't want to lose them. But, you know, I used to be in awe of my grandma. I would never have the nerve to do something like that. Anyway, so she goes on. Okay. C.L., he sat in the back with the older boys, and I remember him grinning at me like I just done the funniest thing. I wasn't in no mood to be laughing, though, me not knowing how Daddy would take it. But he didn't make me go back. Said 6 years was enough for anybody, especially a girl. I didn't know who it was Daddy had fetched up the mountain that day, even after he rode Hercules right up to the porch where I could see the boy's face good. Daddy hadn't said a word before he left, but what he usually said, going to town. This is C.L. Edwards, Daddy said. He's going to help out. You talk about mad. Daddy'd been saying he needed help, in spite of the fact I worked good as any boy, but I never expected that. If looks could kill, C.L. would have been wounded the way I stared him down. I knowed better than to say anything, though. C.L. appeared to have growed some, because when they got down off that mule, he stood a good head taller than Daddy. I could tell he'd been working outside a lot, because even though it was only April, his face and arms was brown. His real name was Clingman, named after a mountain. Made me wonder who picked that and why. Looked like I'd have time to find out. He didn't say a word, just followed Daddy to the barn. C.L. slept in a little room off the barn where we kept tools and saddles and all. When Daddy put him in there, I knowed he wouldn't be around but for the summer. Wasn't no stove out there and would have been too cold for any mortal after September. So C.L. took my place in the field with Daddy, and I kept to the house and the garden. Let me tell you, I didn't like it every bit. I'd worked outside all my life and didn't see no reason to quit. I liked being out from under a roof. But Daddy, he said it's time for me to start acting like a woman and doing womanly things. I argued wasn't no reason I couldn't do both, but he would not back down. C.L. was a good worker, didn't eat too much, so Daddy was happy with him. On Saturday nights, C.L. would go home so he could go to church Sunday morning. His family was Methodist. Me and Daddy, we never took to church. I believe Mama used to get him to go, but he wouldn't talk about it, and I can't remember. Most Sunday mornings I'd go up a mountain till dinner time, so as not to shame Daddy. He thought I didn't know about the drinking on Saturday nights. The woods, that's as close to church as I ever come. Anywhere under some trees has always felt holy to me. Up here there's more trees than people, which is as it ought to be. Daddy, he kept clearing ground, trying to take this mountain away from itself, and the mountain just kept taking it back. Daddy ought to have known he couldn't beat no mountain. I reckon that's what caused his heart troubles, missing Mama and fighting nature. He didn't know I knew about his heart troubles neither, but I found the medicine he kept hid under the mattress, and one day I went to town and talked to that doctor. He said Daddy had a lot of good years if he'd take better care of himself, but it appeared Daddy had more years than he could stand. I don't reckon you ever get over missing people, but a body can give up a fight it knows it'll never win. That was a fight I didn't have no stake in. That mountain was the only Mama I ever knowed, and I wanted it left wild, the way it was when my great-grandsir come over from Tennessee, back in the days before all the creatures got gone. Panthers, buffalo, wolves, who knows what all. Tore me up, still tears me up, to think of all the living things that has been killed off or run off, all the waste. At least I got this mountain in my name, most of it anyhow, and long as I got breath, it'll stay just like it is, just like it was always meant to be. Now that C.L., I could tell he didn't care nothing about no mountain. The only use he'd ever had for trees was feeding them to a sow. I was terrible unkind to him at first. After having the place to ourselves for so long, me and Daddy, I couldn't get used to a stranger, even one I knowed. Seemed everywhere I turned, there he'd be. Even when I'd go off by myself, it got to where I'd think I heard him a-coming up behind me. Sometimes I'd even see him when I closed my eyes. He had a way about him, being so still and quiet, and at the same time letting you know he had you in his sights, like a cat fixing on a mouse. One day, long about the 1st of June, I was in the house a-fixing dinner. It was so hot in there, and every bit of wind to cool things off. Still, I had to fire up the stove to make the bread. Daddy hadn't come in yet, but CL, he's out on the back porch washing his hands in the pan of water I set out. When he got done, he come in the kitchen, and it seemed like the whole room just shrunk. Every time I turned around to fetch a plate or set the beans off the stove, there he'd be. Finally, at last I hollered at him, "If you don't get from here, I'm fixing to rip your arm off and beat you to death with a bloody end." He stared for a minute and then busted out laughing. Well, I never have been able to stand being laughed at. Before I knowed what I was about, my hand shot out and smacked his big laughing face. That shut him up quick. His cheeks got blood red and he stomped out of the kitchen, down them porch steps, down the hill to the spring house. He didn't come eat neither, not even after Daddy come in and I rung the bell again. Daddy just sat down and started eating, didn't say a word. Later on that day, I was working in the garden and seen CL up in the top field hoeing corn. Got to feeling bad. He had not had a bite since before the sun come up. Then that feeling bad made me mad, so I went in the house and wrapped up a hunk of cornbread and a big piece of ham meat, an old cold tater and a clean dish rag. I got him a jar of water, too. By the time I got up there, I had to stop and catch my breath before I could talk. He kept on a-hoeing that corn, didn't even turn his head my way. "Look here," I said, "you needn't think I'll be bringing your meals like this again." I set that food and water down behind him in the road, next to that new corn, and run down the hill fast as I could go. Supper time, he come in the kitchen, set that empty jar and that dish rag on the table. Must have been something interesting on the floor, 'cause that's the only thing he looked at. But then he went back out on the porch, and once he got on the other side of that screen, he turned around and looked at me finally. Right then, felt like the only thing left in the world was our eyes and what was between them. From then on, seemed like we was all the time bumping into one another, or reaching for the same thing at the same time, so our fingers got tangled. By the time the corn was high as my head, we had took to walking out together of an evening in the gloaming time. I wanted to take him and show him all the places I loved on the mountain, but he wouldn't go, not with it coming on dark. There was always too much work of a daytime to go, so we just walked down the road and back, a little further every time. Once we got out of sight of the house, we'd grab hands. First time he kissed me was in the shade of a dogwood that leaned over the road. When it happened, I wished it was spring instead of summer. I wished that tree was white with blossoms like a bridal veil. I wanted to swallow him whole, latch on to him like mistletoe and never let go. By the time the corn was high as his head, I got him up in the woods finally. It was a Saturday and Daddy left early to go to town. Somehow I knowed CL wouldn't be walking down with him like he usually done. I took my time, got washed up, put on a clean dress, brushed out my hair and left it loose. CL, he was out by the barn mending a harness. He felt me watching and turned around, that handful of leather dangling by his leg. Real slow, I started backing off, not letting my eyes off him, pulling him to me. Quick as he dropped that harness and started towards me, I turned and run. Didn't let him catch me till we was way up the mountain at my place in the chestnut ring. That's where I took him, made him mine. That's the end of that little.